Hello, hello. Thank you for joining me for this week's episode. This is a hot topic. First of all, I want to say we have a roofing company here tearing down our roof. It is an absolute destruction of a demolition outside. I mean, there is debris falling in front of my windows. It's crazy, but they're working really quickly. But there is a lot of knocking going on in the background. I cannot for the life of me find my headphones that cancel out all the noise. So I did put on my microphone and hope that that cancels out most of the noise around me. And thankfully, our dogs have been wonderful for this process. I thought they would be barking constantly, and there are about 15 crew guys walking around the yard at any given time. So anyway, if you hear a little bit of knocking in the background, that is it. And hopefully they are done soon. But today, in today's hot topic, this is a really good one and critical for you if you are working on weight loss or been trying to work on weight loss, or weight loss has been an obsession of yours for many years. So I'm going to talk about why you should stop trying to lose weight, focusing solely on weight loss and focusing more on your body composition and increasing protein intake instead. I have been in the weight management area for years, since I've been a dietitian. I've worked with weight loss, obesity, health coaching, somewhere in that realm. And now I focus more on insulin resistance, which is really the reason I focus on that is because it's at the base root of most insulin resistance. And what really helps resolve insulin resistance is getting enough protein and building muscle mass, or at the very least, maintaining the muscle mass that you have and not letting yourself lose any muscle mass or muscle tissue as you age. And that is one of the biggest problems with weight loss, and weight loss that isn't done healthfully. And when you solely focus on weight loss and calories and you don't care what it takes to get that number down on the scale, you're going to do whatever. You're going to starve yourself. You're going to use medications. You're going to, shut off natural messaging from your brain to organs. Whatever it is, you don't care. Like, you don't care if it's been studied. You just want that weight to be down, like you're obsessed with that scale. I'm going to tell you why we should start obsessing about body composition and maintaining and building muscle mass and focusing on protein intake instead. If you can shift your focus, oh my gosh, you're going to feel so much better. You're just getting out of the whole mentality of I've got to lose 2 pounds this week and getting so fixated on the scale. If you can get past that and really just, especially as women, I know the vast majority of my listeners are women, focus on protein intake and building muscle. It's just going to open a whole new world for you, and you're going to feel so much better focusing on that instead. So the diet industry, diet culture, calories in versus calories out that whole scheme has done women such a disservice with, us fixating on that number on the scale. And next week, actually, I'm going to have Nicole McPherson on the podcast, and we're going to talk all about Ozempic and semaglutides. And I know, don't shoot me here. Don't turn off the podcast. I'm not completely against these medications and these tools for weight loss, especially in the cases of severe weight loss resistance. But what alarms me about semaglutide, Wegovy, Ozempic, whatever it is you want to call it, they're all semaglutides, is that research has shown that a lot of the weight loss that is lost through Ozempic is muscle mass. And that is what scares me, because once you go off the medications, you stop taking them, you likely are not going to gain back that weight and muscle mass. You're going to gain it back in body fat. And now, even if your weight is the same, you regain the weight back and you're back to where you were, you have more fat, you have less muscle mass. So that's my biggest concern, but we'll dive in deeper to that topic next week. But that's why I just, after you listen to this podcast, I hope your focus, just changes a little bit. And like I said, hear me out. I do think that Wegovy, Ozempic, there is a small subset of people that this can work very well for if you've been severely insulin or not insulin resistant, severely weight loss resistant, which usually you do have severe insulin resistance. It can be very helpful to kind of jumpstart things, but being on it long term, I think is kind of scary. And knowing that you're likely going to lose some muscle mass, especially if you're not targeting your nutrition appropriately, you're not focusing on strength training, and you don't change your actual habits, and you're just basically not eating. I think that can be very concerning, but we really need to start focusing on improving our muscle mass and decreasing body fat. So if we can if we can improve our muscle mass and decrease body fat, even if we're staying the same weight, we are so much healthier metabolically. So, if we look back at even like shows like The Biggest Loser, if we look at studies that have been done on that show, so I'm sure everybody's heard of this, but basically it was a TV show. Oh gosh, it was probably on a good 10 to 20 years ago, where, there's a group of people who were very overweight and unhealthy, and they went through some really rigorous training with Jillian Michaels. Gosh, she was crazy, as the head little personal trainer lady. But anyway, they lost weight very quickly. The emphasis was on calorie reduction. They did work out profusely, but the focus was on very fast weight loss. And so they did lose a good amount of lean tissue. They lost body fat, but they were very calorie restricted and lost muscle mass as well. So there were studies done that 90% of the weight that was lost with those who were on The Biggest Loser, 90% of the weight was gained back within 5 years of being on the show. And what happened is these people, they gained back more fat than what they started with. So, and then they, not only did they gain their weight back, but they also gained more fat back. Because they had decreased metabolic rates from that severe calorie reduction. So we know that severe calorie reduction doesn't work. It will work for a while, right? I mean, it works in the case of The Biggest Loser. You've probably done pretty severe calorie restriction in the past and it works, but within about 3 to 6 months, you just can't maintain that anymore. And your body's desire to eat and the starvation mode crisis inside your body, cortisol, all of those metabolic processes just kick in and you can't help it anymore. You need to increase your caloric intake. And then you gain back your weight. So what I would suggest you start with is something called a Dexa scan. If you haven't heard of that, it's DEXA, Dexa scan. Now, most hospitals will carry a Dexa scan. It's about a 10-minute test, and a lot of personal trainers or gyms might even have Dexa scans. It's not painful. It's just a scan of your body that's done in about 10 minutes. And what it shows you is bone density. So it was kind of developed for bone density. So it will tell you, like, if you have brittle bones at all, if you're have osteoporosis, if you have osteopenia, which is the starting of osteoporosis, it'll look at your bone density. And I will say, those who are very protein deficient usually have poor bone density, because a high protein diet actually helps with bone density. We're told calcium, like take your calcium supplements, drink your calcium, and maybe vitamin D, like that's always the primary focus for bone density. But protein plays a huge role in strong bones, because bones are made out of hardened, porous protein. So if you don't eat enough protein, your bones can get very brittle. We see this with anorexics. We see this with those with eating disorders, because they don't eat enough protein. So I would go and get a Dexa scan. So this will tell you your bone density. It will also tell you your muscle mass to body fat ratio, which is a huge, what's the word I want to say? It's very, very important to look at, but it's going to be hugely important for you to look at your baseline number and be able to track it and see, like, am I gaining muscle? Am I losing fat? Because getting on the scale doesn't show you that. It just shows you a number. It doesn't show you what your body composition is. So especially as we age, as our hormones change, as women, as our estrogen decreases, that usually leads to less bone density as well with the estrogen, because there's estrogen receptors in the bone, and just that whole menopause, perimenopause and menopause, going through that, it can really, just make our bones more porous. And my goodness, I feel like I am searching for words. There's so much going on behind me that I feel like I'm like kind of all out of sorts. So I am sorry. Like, I am just having one of those days where the words aren't coming to me. So I'm doing my best here and doing my best with explaining it. But what you want to look at is the body composition. It will also tell you your skeletal muscle. Your skeletal muscle, it will show you your fat versus fat-free mass. So you can track it over time. It'll also show you, this Dexa scan will show you where your body fat is located and where your muscle mass is located. So you can see, changes in your body fat and see if you're losing more subcutaneous fat, which is the fat underneath your skin that maybe we don't like to look at, like in our buttocks and our hips and maybe under our arms, but it's not that harmful for us, versus the visceral fat around our organs, which is very harmful to us, which I talked more about last week. But then you can see, are you losing visceral fat? Are you gaining muscle mass? And you can go and track this every 3 to 6 months and, see how you're doing with your body composition. Dexa scans are not that expensive. So you can get one of these every 6 months or so and track it. You can also use, after you get the Dexa scan, you could use a tape measure and a bioimpedance scale. So a home scale that kind of gives you your body fat to lean tissue. You can do that. There's some pretty inexpensive home body scales, bioimpedance scales that you can track on. I wouldn't recommend doing those every day, maybe once a week, every couple of weeks, but use that and a tape measure and just keep track of your measurements and your body composition. Because being under muscled, losing muscle mass, is much more dangerous than being over fat. It seems crazy, but if you have sarcopenia, which means low muscle mass, and a lot of people grow sarcopenic as they age, that is a bigger health risk than being over fat in many circumstances. So we want to focus on feeding muscle. Like, how do we do that? We want to preserve the muscle mass that we have. And I would say the vast majority of people believe that as you age, you need less protein. Like, I'm not, as physically active as I am, at 70 as I was at 40. I don't need to eat as much protein. And that's actually not true, because as we age, we actually need more protein, if you can believe that, because we don't digest and assimilate it in the same way that we do when we're younger. Our body just isn't as efficient at utilizing the protein, breaking it down and utilizing it. So we actually need more protein as we age, which is really crazy to think about. Another reason why, protein assimilation and digestion can be a problem as we age, I've talked about this before, is we have lower stomach acid as we age, and then we just don't digest our protein as effectively. So it's really important to focus on protein as we get older. So focus on feeding the muscle and losing fat. Like, you can do these things together. Obviously, you can gain muscle mass, lose fat, but if you really just focus on gaining muscle mass or, protein targets, you're going to naturally start to resolve too much body fat. So a couple of things to think about when we are focusing on protein target. And what I would focus on for a protein target is look at your target body weight. So not the weight that you're at, if you're overweight, not that weight necessarily, but your target body weight. So maybe your target body weight is like 140 or 150. And, I'm not talking about like, oh, I have to set this goal weight and get down there. But for protein purposes, think about what your target body weight is. And then we want to eat in grams of protein, about 0.7 to 1 pound of target body weight. So take your target body weight, say it's 150, and multiply that by 0.7. That is the minimum of what you should be eating in protein a day. So for me, like I'm about 122 to 125 pounds, somewhere in there. So my target, I'm at my target body weight. I don't want to lose weight, but my target protein intake would be anywhere from 85 to 120 grams per day. And I target for myself 100 grams of protein a day. And for women, if you don't want to do all the calculations, and this is what I teach on my Instagram page, like just target 100 grams of protein a day for women, like make that your target. But if you're a bigger person, taller person, you might need more like 150 grams of protein a day. So that's a lot. Most women eat about 40 to 75 grams of protein a day. Maybe. I mean, I know of teenagers, especially, that eat far under that. Maybe they're eating 30 grams of protein all day long and lots of carbs and lots of sugar. So we need to figure out what our target protein is and then figure out how we are going to get there. So we want to focus on protein for muscle mass, right? Feeding that feeds our muscle. It's also more satiating. We know this. Like I eat between 50 and 60 grams of protein for my first meal. Okay, so right now I'm recording this. It's almost 2:00 in the afternoon. I ate at 11. I am still like super full. Like I'm not even remotely getting hungry. 3 hours. I'm about 2.5 to 3 hours after my meal. I ate about 55 grams of protein today. Wasn't like an overly big meal. It was just really high in protein and I am full. And it's mid-afternoon. And a lot of times when I used to eat higher carb, I would be thinking about what I could have a snack on by this time of in the day, but there's no way. Like I feel like I just finished my meal. Like sometimes I still feel really full and it'll be like time to pick up my son. And I'm like, it's 3:00 in the afternoon. Like, how am I still this full when I've eaten 4 hours before? But it's because I eat a high protein. I aim for 50 to 60 grams of protein in that first meal coming off my fast. And I usually eat like mid to late morning. But that it's so satiating. It's more thermic. So there's more thermogenesis in protein. And that means that it takes our body more energy, more heat actually, to break down protein, about 20 to 30% more energy for the thermogenesis of protein. So breaking it down, assimilating it, getting it where it needs to be. It takes 20 to 30% more energy for your body to do that. So it's not like it's this big calorie burn, but it does make a difference. And that 20 to 30%, that might, be pretty significant when we're looking at the thermogenesis of food. So it takes more energy to break it down, and it's critical for blood sugar control. Your blood sugar loves protein. Like it just levels out protein, or it levels out blood sugar. So I've preached this so many times, like make that first meal coming off your fast. You have to target protein and high protein and make that your primary target for that, especially the first meal coming off your fast. It can be all meals, but that first meal coming off your fast for blood sugar regulation. And when people are just overwhelmed and they're someone new to me, new student, just started following me on Instagram, just started listening to my podcast, they're like, I'm so overwhelmed, I don't even know what to do. This is what I tell them. First, I tell them work on stopping snacking. But what I want you to work on is the first meal that you're eating. That's it. Make it high in protein and low in carbs. Start there. High protein, low carb, first meal of the day. stop eating after dinner, stop snacking. Those things are going to make a huge difference in how you feel throughout the day and how much you eat and how your energy level is and where your blood sugar is at. So again, the target body weight is 0.7, or the target protein is 0.7 to 1 pound of target body weight. We're going to look at about at least 100 grams. So if you're eating 3 meals, which some of you are when you're first starting this whole time restricted eating and low insulin lifestyle, you're targeting about 35 grams of protein if you're doing 3 meals. Now, I only eat 2 meals most days. Every once in a while, I'll eat 3, but because I eat such a high protein first meal, and any more protein at my second meal, I'm just not hungry for 3 meals. But I eat a lot of protein in those 2 meals. So you can start with 3 and target about 35 grams of protein per meal, or you can start with 2 meals and just make sure you're getting 50 to 60 in that first meal. And then when you eat again, try to get another 50 grams per day or so. So what else here? What is the next thing I want? Oh, so I've had some people ask me like, okay, I'm vegetarian or I'm vegan. Can I do your program? And I always tell them like, yes, you can adapt the strategies, but it's going to be more difficult for you. Like it is hard to get 100 grams of protein when you're vegan. And even if you're getting 100 grams of protein, that protein isn't assimilated and utilized as well as animal protein. So you can, but at least if you're vegetarian, including eggs and cheese or dairy, that is helpful. And then, so if you're vegan or vegetarian, you might need even more protein because you're not assimilating and utilizing it as well as if it were animal protein. So your target may need to be more like 120 as a minimum if you're vegetarian, which is very difficult. Extra stress will increase your protein needs even more because your body's just burning through. When you're super stressed out, you don't feel this, but your body is going through more nutrients that releasing cortisol, all those hormones cascade, higher inflammation. You just burn through more energy. You burn through more hormones. You burn through more reserves. And so you actually need even more protein during really high stressful times. And then of course, if you're doing really heavy workouts, that can increase your protein needs even more. So when you're looking at meals, you can, break your fast with non-starchy vegetables. And if you don't, protein or fat is fine. You just don't want to break your fast with high starchy foods or sugary foods, but I want you to target protein first, and then you can add some non-starchy vegetables for fiber, and then a little bit of fat, and keep it that simple. You are going to be full if you do that. So if you don't know where to start with this, I have a free complete protein guide. If you don't have that, if you're on Instagram, you can just comment the word protein on any of my posts or in my stories. You just comment the word protein and you'll get the link for my free protein guide, or it's in the show notes. And I think if you go to fasttoheal.info/protein guide, it is there as well. So grab that. That'll give you some ideas, at least to get started if you're not sure about, how to get your protein up. So if you've been under eating or you've been really calorie deficient because that's how you've been focusing on losing weight, it may take some time to, you have to really slowly bring your calories up. If you go from eating 1,000 calories to 2,000 calories, you're going to gain weight really quickly. So you need to maybe do 1,200 for a couple of weeks. And then, not that I'm big on calorie counting, but if you've been calorie counting, you need to slowly bring it up and focus on those extra calories coming from protein. And then, obviously look at your thyroid health too. Like if you've been really weight loss resistant. And so I teach people to target their protein or target their macronutrients, target protein first. And I don't know about you as a listener, but I crave protein. Like I used to crave carbohydrates more. And like really, when I first started this lifestyle, I really craved my carbs. Like I craved bread and bagels and oatmeal, and I wasn't eating those foods anymore, and tortillas and crackers. And now I'm like, give me some eggs, give me some meat, give me a burger, give me some steak. Like that is what I crave. I eat eggs almost every day as my first meal. We have our backyard chick. We have 10 chickens. We get 6 to 7 eggs pretty much every day. And so and I love them. Like I crave eggs. So I'm eating those for almost every meal. I'm eating, Greek yogurt, cottage cheese, lunch meat, other meats, leftovers from the night before. We eat a ton of venison here. We eat a lot of fish. And we eat some chicken as well. But I crave protein. Like I don't crave carbs anymore. And the fullness that I feel after a high protein meal, it's just like a good full. It's not like I need to go take a nap full, or I'm a bloated full where I'm just like, oh, I wish I could go back and not eat that. It's just a good full. Like I know I'm nourished. It's a nourished feeling full. And I know I'm not going to have to eat for a really long time. I'm not going to have to think about food because I'm full and I'm nourished. So I definitely love that. And then as far as like carbs and fat goes, you got to play around with that. Like some people can do okay with a little bit higher level of carbs, but for my purposes, with most of the students and people that I'm working with, they have severe metabolic issues. They have fatty liver, they have diabetes. They have PCOS, they have high blood pressure, they have lipid issues, their cholesterol's high, their triglycerides are high. Those folks do better on low carb. That's just how it is because you're not utilizing carbohydrates well. And then you can, increase your fat a little bit from there, but your protein should always be your first target. So what I want you to think about too, another huge concept to think about is you need to get your body healthy to lose weight. Okay, you don't lose weight to get healthy. Remember that being obese or over fat is a side effect of something going on in your body: inflammation, insulin resistance, hormonal dysregulation, metabolic disease. That's why you're overweight and dealing with obesity. So you need to get healthy and let the weight start to manage itself instead of losing weight to get healthy. I hope you see the difference there. You need to get healthy to lose weight, not lose weight to get healthy. That's a huge mindset shift there. And so if we can, again, focus on protein intake and preserving or building muscle mass, we are going to be more insulin sensitive. Muscle mass makes you more insulin sensitive, which is the opposite of insulin resistance. So think of your muscles like little sugar sponges. It's awesome. Like I've talked about this many, many times. We store carbohydrates in the form of glycogen. We store some in our liver and we store some in our muscle. We have more muscle. We have more storage potential for carbohydrates. So we can afford to eat a little bit more carbohydrates. If we do have a meal that's higher carb, higher starch, higher sugar here and there, our muscles will soak up that extra sugar and it's not that big of a deal. But if you don't have a lot of muscle mass and those buckets are always full, those little, sugar sponges that are glycogen, you're going to struggle. So more muscle mass means that you have more storage potential for carbohydrates. So it just helps all around. So you have more muscle mass. So I'll talk about sleep and stress in a few minutes, and we talk about that a lot too. But the non-starchy vegetables are going to help as well because that's going to increase your fiber, which helps with fullness, and it feeds the good bacteria in the gut and keeps your microbiome healthy. So you want to look at staying away from diets or protocols that will make your muscle mass worse and won't help you to build muscle mass, right? So again, I know that the semaglutides are a huge craze right now, and they do promise, pretty big weight loss very quickly for a lot of people, but at what cost? Are you going to take, the Wegovy or the Ozempic and just sit on your couch and do nothing and just not eat? Like you'll lose weight, but you're going to lose muscle mass. It's not healthy for your body. And then, you want to go off the semaglutide, the Ozempic, the Wegovy, and then there's the potential for weight loss. So focus on protocols that actually help you build muscle mass, preserve muscle mass, target protein so that you can be more insulin sensitive and keep that muscle mass that you have. So this brings me to, fasting protocols, because we talk a lot about this on the podcast. Obviously, the podcast called Fast to Heal Stories, and I'm actually contemplating changing the name of the podcast, because when I first started the podcast 135 episodes ago, coming up on 3 years here, a lot of my focus was on fasting protocols, and now it's more on low insulin, right? And a low insulin lifestyle. And fasting is definitely a part of that, time restricted eating, but I'm thinking of changing the name of the podcast to Low Insulin Lifestyle, just because that's really what I focus on. So write to me and let me know what you think of that. But when it comes to fasting protocols, I've never been a big proponent of OMAD, or 1 meal a day, for several reasons. And I've done whole podcasts on this. I think doing OMAD maybe once a week, every once in a while, can be helpful. But if I'm telling you to target 100 to 120 grams of protein, maybe 150 grams of protein, and that's for females, males are even more. They're more like 150 to 180 grams, maybe even 200 grams of protein, depending on their muscle mass. How are you going to get that in 1 meal a day? You're not. It's 100 grams of protein in 1 meal is really tough. Even if you ate that much protein, you're not going to break down, utilize, and assimilate all of that at once. Your body most likely is not going to. So getting it from a couple of meals a day to sometimes even 3 can be much more efficient for your body, and much more, it's just a more relaxed lifestyle as well. Like, I'm not dissing OMAD. I shouldn't say I'm not dissing it. I'm not in favor of OMAD, but I know that it does work for some people, and it can work long-term for some people. But I do know of many people who it's backfired on eventually too, because they want to discontinue that lifestyle. But then they have trouble. And sometimes it's put you in such a calorie deficit, because again, it's hard to eat the nourishment that you want in 1 meal over and over. Like, even if, eating 1,200 calories in a day, that's a lot of calories, like in a meal, I should say, not a day, a meal, that's a lot. So getting 100 grams of protein, 1,200 calories in 1 meal, that can be difficult for some people. And if that's all you're eating all day, you can be undernourished. So again, I think OMAD can be okay for short periods of time. It can be okay maybe once a week, twice a week at most, but I don't think it's the best approach day after day, just because you can't get your nutrition and your protein in. So I would focus on adding in longer fasts, maybe once a week, once every couple of weeks, and then staying away from those longer fasts the week before your menstrual cycle. So starting at age of about 50, about 11% of Americans will develop sarcopenia. And sarcopenia is not a good thing to develop. It's basically low muscle mass. And with sarcopenia can come bone breaks, hip breaks, fractures. At about age 40, 35 to 40, we lose about 1% of our muscle mass a year, and about 2 to 4% of our strength per year, which doesn't sound like a ton, but 10, 20 years down the road, you've now lost 20% of your muscle mass, and half of your strength. That's not good. That's only if you don't preserve it. Okay. Your metabolic rate doesn't actually fall. You just I shouldn't say that. It will fall a little bit, but if you can preserve your lean tissue where it's at, you're not going to get a dip in metabolic rate over time. So it really is dependent on that muscle mass. So, out of that 11% that develop sarcopenia, about 50% of those folks over the age of 60 will have a fall. And a lot of times it's a hip fracture. And if you know anybody who's had a hip fracture, they are a beast to recover from. About 30% of these people will die, which is crazy because you think, oh, you broke your hip, you know, how would that lead to death? But you just don't recover from it. And that's due to being frail. Like, we don't want to be frail in our older age, right? Like, I've seen this. Like, it's amazing. You can look at an 80-year-old male or female who's in shape with a good amount of muscle mass doing things that 40-year-olds might not. So you really choose how you're going to age based on your muscle mass. We don't want to be frail. So the ones who grow really frail are the ones who are stuck in this diet culture, you know, compromising their caloric intake, and it's through no fault of our own. I mean, we've been fed terrible guidelines for the last 50 years, and it's now 2-3 generations that have been exposed to absolutely atrocious foods with very little nutrition, very little protein, not good natural fats. But even, you know, and then I talked about estrogen falling a little bit earlier, but those drops in estrogen, that just makes for brittle bones all around. So this obsession with weight loss needs to go. I get it. I mean, I know it's really, it can be really, really exciting when you do see weight loss for the first time in a long time. But if you make your primary focus on keeping the muscle mass and keeping your muscle mass where it is and changing your body composition, feeding your muscle mass, your body composition is going to start to work itself out. Like I said, that will just make you more insulin sensitive and start to naturally reverse that insulin resistance. So that's my spiel on that. So stop focusing on weight loss, start focusing more on protein intake and preserving muscle mass and your body composition. And of course, sleep and stress come into play here. I talk about this in almost every podcast episode, but if you're undersleeping, you are in a catabolic state. Okay. This increases cortisol, and these are catabolic hormones that promote your body into breaking things down rather than building things up. So you become more insulin resistant with lack of sleep. You become hungrier. You can't heal. Your hormones are dysregulated. So you have to make sleep a priority. And then, of course, being in a stressed out stage with high cortisol levels, again, that's going to make you more catabolic. It's going to be really tough to build muscle mass in this constant fight or flight, lifestyle from day to day. And so you become more insulin resistant. So those have to be focuses, like primary focuses of your lifestyle as well. A good way to, it's hard to measure stress. It's like sometimes we really feel it, sometimes not. Like I feel like sometimes, like I know I'm under stress, but I don't necessarily feel it, where there's other times where I'm like, my guts are churning, I'm not sleeping well, and just stressed out. But one way to measure stress is HRV. And I do this, which is I measure my HRV in my Oura ring. Apple Watches, I believe, will do that. And then there's, I think it's called the Hanu device, HANU, that also will measure HRV. And that's heart rate variability. And that is a great way to kind of measure your overall stress. And as you age, your heart rate variability will decline. But I see mine on my Oura ring, and sometimes I feel like, oh, I got some decent sleep, but my neck hurts. And I look and I'm like, my HRV is terrible. I'm like, oh, I guess, I'm not feeling good. I'm not feeling my best. My muscles are sore. So it's just a good way to actually measure stress. So think about mindfulness for stress. This will be, I can bring somebody on to talk more about this in a future episode, but that mindfulness exercise, I've always kind of poo-pooed these, like yoga. I'm like, that's not for me. I get bored. My mind wanders. Mindfulness activities are not good for me either. Like I don't let myself just be mindless. And that is a problem with my personality. Like, I know it. So what I've started to do, this is for me, you choose your own thing that is going to, meditation and breath work can work very, very well for a lot of people. But what I've started to do is I've really grown in my spiritual life in the last several months. And I take just about every morning, whether I'm walking the dogs or just sitting in my backyard, if weather permits, is I have conversations with God. And that really helps to just settle my mind. I try to do a little bit deep breathing while I'm doing that. And that is something that's brand new for me. Like, that is a new habit that I'm trying to instill because I just wasn't adding this component in. So that can be helpful. So adding meditation or breath work just to keep that stress managed, because sometimes we don't always feel it, but our bodies are really stressed out. And then the last thing is, looking at the supplement creatine for muscle mass. And I'm going to be bringing Cynthia Thurlow back on in the podcast in a couple of weeks. And she's going to talk more about creatine because that is one of the supplement lines that she has in her company. She'll also be talking about myo-inositol. So we'll be talking about those supplements and how they can be helpful for you. But creatine is one of those things that we think, oh, only bodybuilders are using creatine, right? We're going to get these big, giant, bulky muscles. And I was kind of the same way. Whereas all women should be on creatine. It really helps to just maintain the muscle mass. And especially if you're not eating enough protein, the creatine actually helps to keep that protein where it needs, like, send the protein where it needs to go and actually utilize it in the best way. So we'll talk more about that in a couple of weeks as well. But you don't have a reservoir for amino acids, meaning you can't really store amino acids or protein. So you have to eat. That's why I'm like, every day you need to target these proteins. It's not like, oh, I'll target my protein intake once or twice a week and be fine. It's like, no, you have no amino acid reservoir. You can't store it. So you need to eat it every single day to help with the muscle mass. So the creatine will help build the muscle and keep it where it is. I know my youngest son is really, he takes creatine every day and he uses it around his weight training. There's really no downside to it or side effects. So I think for women, it can be really, really helpful. So look for that podcast in the next couple of weeks as well. So hopefully that gives you a fresh new perspective on, reaching protein targets, becoming less insulin resistant, becoming more insulin sensitive. Of course, I teach all of these concepts in Low Insulin Academy, which is my highest level course to reverse insulin resistance. There are links in the show notes for that. You can do the on-demand version at any time. My next live version starts in September 2023. Enrollment will open in early September. And if you learned a lot of great stuff from this podcast, any episodes, please just grab the link, highlight and copy the link and share it with somebody who you think would benefit so we can get this out in front of more people. And ratings and reviews on Apple iTunes are always, always, always so helpful to help grow the podcast as well. So with that, I hope you learned a ton. Go and eat your protein, shoot for at least 100 grams of protein tomorrow, and I'll see you back next week for another episode.